Alrighty, and we're live. Hello, everyone. It's Alex here from Being Better Balance, and I am super excited to have the lovely Narelle with us today. Narelle is a wonderful speech pathologist, and full disclosure, Narelle and I went to school together, so we've known each other for a really long time. Narelle has a bachelor's degree in health science and a master's in speech, and works with kids and families in all different capacities. So tell us a little bit about you, Narelle, and how you came to be a speech pathologist and all that sort of thing.
So after school, I studied uni at La Trobe in Bendigo. So Bachelor of Health and Master of Speech, as you mentioned. My first job was up in Cairns in inpatient rehabilitation, and then moved to Warrnambool and now work with community health. So about 85% of people I see are kids, and then the rest are adults, mainly aged care facilities with swallowing issues, but yeah, mainly kids.
Yeah, cool. That's awesome. And we have a huge amount of women who have lots of questions in regard to their little one's speech and how it's developing, what's normal, what's maybe not so normal. Do you have kind of, I guess when we're looking at this, it's such a complex topic and it can be different for everybody, but are there certain things that you kind of look at and go, this is a really normal part of development, or, you know, what would you expect for different age groups, I guess?
Yeah, well, and that's the other thing. Like, often parents come in, I'm concerned about my little one's communication. All right, well, what part? Because as speechies, we can work with children who stutter. We can work with children who have a speech sound delay or a language delay in both they have trouble understanding or they can't quite use the words the way they should be, or a combination of all of those. So I suppose it's a matter of what area is your little one falling down in, and obviously we'll have a look as well and pick apart where they're really good at and where we're having some trouble. And often this can be done even just in a case history, like is there a family history of speech or language? Often language is more, not delayed, but takes a little bit longer in boys than girls. We don't know why. Yeah. Same with stuttering. Yeah. Stuttering is more common in boys than in girls. We don't know why. So it's a combination of factors.
Yeah. So on the stuttering, for example, at what point do you kind of go, because, you know, it's often a little bit of that step in their development as they are learning to speak and things like that. At what point do you kind of go, right, this has become more of an issue, we need to get on top of it? Or is it always normal or always something that we need to be worried about?
Yeah, sure. So from the ages like 2.5 to 5, around 5% of children stutter, and around when a child hits 3, about 8.5% of them stutter. And there is a part of natural disfluency, like we do it when we say and ah in our own speech. But it's when it gets to that point where you're like, when you start to feel uncomfortable listening to that little one, you're like, oh, he's really having a hard time getting that message across. And again, there's different types of stutters. So you can see a child who has a sound disfluency, and that's just when they repeat the same sound. So say if they're trying to say snake, it's snake, or they can prolong that like snake, or it can be repetitions of the whole word. It can also become what we call superfluous behaviors, where they blink a lot, and that can be a sign of a stutter as well, which I don't always pick up on. Or there's a really obvious, and you're like, oh, this poor little one, where their mouth remains open or closed. Like say if they're trying to say I, it'll be I, or if they're trying to say
their voice.
It'll be me, and they just can't get it out. So, yeah, stuttering's one of those ones when you really feel like, you know, we need to get on top of this for the little one.
Yeah. So that's more your gut, I suppose, saying, right, we need to really help with this area or that area, or that's kind of been prolonged, I suppose. That's when you go, right, let's get in there and make a change.
Yeah, and I think with speeches as well, there's been a shift of, it used to be a wait and see, you know, like, oh, you know, the child's coming to the clinic. Yeah, they've got a stutter, but we'll wait and see for a little bit to see if there is some natural recovery, or we need to get on top of this and hope that therapy as well as natural recovery can kind of get more fluency happening for that child. So that's been a big shift. We're not waiting anymore. We're getting on top of it.
Yeah, right. You're putting those interventions in place straight away kind of thing.
Yeah.
Awesome. If you've got questions, by the way, for anybody watching, please feel free to comment them below so that we can make sure we get to them. Other than that, so when we're looking at that early speech development and promoting that development. What are your kind of big tips to get families to implement at home?
Yeah, sure. So speech sounds are completely different to language development. So speech with babies, when they're chewing and sucking on toys, don't stop them, because that's how they develop all these muscles that we need in our mouth and tongue for articulation. They need to really develop those muscles to be able to make the right sounds. And often,
in the same way that we need those for eating. Remember when we had our Facebook Live with our nutritionist Sarah, we're talking about that as well, how there can be that overlap. If those muscles aren't working quite so great, then we often will have that struggle with fussy eating and things like that too.
Yeah, and often that's part of our case history is, does your child eat a variety of textures? Because if they're not chewing, they aren't developing the right muscles. Is it a sensory issue, or is it just fussy eating, or what is it? And there are speeches who do work in pediatric feeding and fussy eating. It's a bit more exciting. I'd love to do it one day, just not with a 15-month-old.
Always makes it a little bit more tricky.
Yeah, exactly. So, speech sounds, and when babies blow raspberries, they're developing lip sounds. So playing with sounds is a really big one, that when, a parent comes in with a child with a speech or language delay, it's just sit in front of the mirror and practice blowing like raspberries to get those lips moving. Or, poke your tongue out as far as you can to get some tongue movement happening.
All those little funny things that you watch grandparents do with their grandchildren. Exactly right. There's a reason for that.
And I was just in the supermarket this morning, and it was the best, because I had my little one in the trolley, and there was a mum with a younger baby, and she was like, oh, look at all the veggies. We have red and we've got orange and yellow. And I was like, yay, someone actually talking to their baby. And that's one of the great things about promoting language development, is just comment on what you're doing. You might feel ridiculous, but kids are sponges. And if you think about it, all a baby does until they talk is listen. They can't really communicate other than with crying or smiling.
Yeah.
They're listening. So singing is one of the best ways to promote language, because it activates the left and right side of the brain. So it's amazing. I love it.
And it from a chiropractic perspective as well, and what we look at in practice is that's a really nice balanced way of getting a child to do something as well. So I think that's a great idea, is the singing and getting them involved in a more fun capacity, I suppose, rather than it being regimented type learning and practicing of sounds. That's awesome.
And as you said, Alex, with regimented learning, one of the big things a lot of parents find, like, oh, why didn't I think of this, is books. Often parents feel like they need to read every single word on a page on a book. But kids at this young age, from 0 to 2, 0 to 3, they don't have that concentration. Just show them a page. If they point to something, oh, yeah, it's a truck. It's a big truck. They don't need to know the truck went down the road and turned around and then picked up a cow.
And it saves you time. It's a win-win situation.
Yeah, exactly right. And it's even quicker.
Cool. So music and books, anything else that you kind of go, this is really helpful for promoting speech or I know they're different, but speech or language development. Anything that you want to touch on? I feel like I'm blurring the lines for you.
All good. Eye contact is a huge one for communication. This can be as simple as drawing little faces on your fingers to pull it up near your face to learn that, I need to look at someone's face when they're talking to me.
Yeah, okay.
Even things like peekaboo, things like that. And when they are young, even before they start talking, listening and attention. So this could be things like, you have a really noisy toy. If you hide it under the pillow, can your child go find that? Can they hear it?
Okay.
So you need to hear to develop your language and speech.
Yeah.
So often if a child has recurrent ear infections, it can lead to a sensory neural, so a nerve issue with the hearing. So that's often one. With our case history, again, it's, has your child had recurrent hearing issues? Have they had a hearing test?
Yeah, right. And it's such an important facet of speech pathology, isn't it? The hearing side of things as well. I know we were talking before we went live about all the different components of speech that you guys look at. And it's certainly not just, is the language, great, or is it, are they creating the right words or whatever? There's a whole heap of different things that you guys are looking at. Do you want to touch on any of those factors?
Yeah, sure. So we also look at they're pragmatic. So how they're using their language. Do they know that they have to turn take? Like, I can't talk over you, because we as adults know that we need to turn take, but kids often no, they barge straight in. So we look at that, and yes, there's like a, you know, an age where you expect that to be normal, and then we should start working on this. As well as, do they know that they can't stand on top of you when they're talking, or because often kinder kids, some are really great at learning, like, I need to stand next to my friend, but other ones are like right on top of them. Do they know what no means? Because a lot of kids have trouble.
That's a big one. I feel like that goes right up to teenage years. I know my mum would definitely say that I had trouble learning what no meant as a child.
And like, in the early years, they might refer to themselves in third person, like, oh, my little one's called Harry. Harry, do this, or me, do this. But then we want it to, how do we transition to I can do this?
I can do this.
Yeah. And how many words are they saying in a sentence? Is it just one word, or is it 2-word utterances, 3-word utterances? So we're looking at all of those sorts of things and how they're using that to communicate.
Yeah, definitely. And so when we're looking at, say, we've got a 18-month-old or a 2-year-old, how you mentioned, how many words they're using in a sentence and things like that, is there a particular amount that you kind of go, your child should be saying XYZ amount of words by this age? If not, then we start to get concerned.
Yeah, so I know a lot of people say, average first word is around 12 months, but in reality, they start really, depends on the child as well. So 12 to 15 months is more so when you might have your first word, and it might be really hard to understand, but you might be like, wait, they're consistently sound when they're pointing to this, so that's what their word is for it. And at 18 months, they're around 25% intelligible to unfamiliar people. So when one of the one's 18 months, Alex, you might listen to him and be like, what on earth is he saying? But I'll be like, I hear this every day. I'm used to this. This is what he means.
Yeah.
So, and then obviously as they get older, that intelligibility increases. You hope everything across.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. Definitely. So probably around that, once we hit 2 years old, you want more and more people being able to understand your child. And if that's not the case, that's when we start going, okay, we might need to get some help in this area.
Yeah, and often it's really simple little strategies for parents, like, if your child says one word, you need to be one step ahead. If they say ball, you say big ball, yellow ball, just to try and encourage that language development.
Yeah, those more descriptive, I can't even remember what they're called. Are they adverbs or something like that, or whatever? Anyway.
Alex.
I don't remember. That's way too far gone for me. But all of those describing words, we'll stick with describing. That makes plenty of sense.
Adjectives,
yeah. And so what about, I know we've had a couple of questions from people following our Instagram and things like that in regard to dummies, which can be a hugely controversial topic, not only for speech pathologists, but for a whole range of health professionals, and looking at, a child's development. What's your take on that? Is there an age where you go, this is interrupting their speech, get rid of it?
Yeah. So this is another one in our case history. Did they suck on the dummy? Did they use their fingers, thumbs? What are they doing? And I suppose the biggest question with it is, do they try and talk with it in their mouth? And often it's no. And I'm like, thank goodness, because if they do, their tongue's kind of pushing the dummy up, and it can cause an open bite with teeth, especially if it's a thumb. So if you're sucking on your thumb, your teeth don't quite meet if you're doing it prolonged. So that can lead to issues with articulation, like an S sound. You need to be able to close your teeth, but your tongue will be coming straight through because there is this hole.
There's not a proper, there's malocclusion. Yeah.
And often we find that if a child has a dummy or a finger or a thumb to suck on, they don't feel the need to talk because that is in their mouth. So for us, it's, can we please try and remove this as soon as possible? And it's hard because kids use it as a comforting.
Absolutely. Well, that's why they're called a pacifier, really. I don't know where dummies came from over here in Australia, but in the US, that's exactly what they're called, a pacifier, for that reason. They pacify your kids. So is there a certain age that you go, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but with your little one, for example, did you say, right, as of 6 months, no more dummy, or do you only use it at nighttime, or how do you suggest it.
Harry's only ever had it for sleep, and by the time we reach 18 months, we'll try and get rid of it completely. I suppose one thing to keep in mind, as much as I'm naysaying dummies, they are fantastic to help self-soothe, but again, up to a certain point. And all of the dummies are orthodontic approved, so they don't affect the teeth development, which is great. But please make sure that they are actually orthodontic approved, because there's so many nice, pretty looking dummies, and not all of them are great.
Ones with mustaches, and some friends of ours have got these hilarious ones that have got a little mustache on the front. Super cute. But whether they're great for their teeth or not.
And I know a lot of people say often when a child can understand why they can't have the dummy, like, you know, once they hit 2, the dummy fairy has come to take the dummy. They can understand that I haven't got it anymore because a fairy's come to take it.
Yeah, if we can get rid of it a little bit sooner, definitely. And those orthodontic approved dummies, can you get them anywhere? Are they just at the chemist, supermarket?
Ones, the Nuck brand ones, yeah.
So they're everywhere. You don't have to seek them out, especially. Awesome. Well, that's been fantastic. There's so many little gems in there that will really help lots of people in terms of making sure their child's speech and language development, which are 2 different things. If you didn't know that, go back and watch the rest of this live. On track, which is fantastic. So make sure you guys check in. Narelle's going to be joining us a little bit later in the year for an interactive webinar as well, where we can delve into this whole speech development thing a little bit more, and she'll be able to answer all of your questions specifically. If you do have any other questions, though, feel free to jot them down in the comments, and we will aim to get back to you ASAP. Also, don't forget to check out our interactive webinar coming up in a couple of weeks with lactation consultant Jacqueline Kinzer from Holistic Lactation. She's joining us all the way from the US, and we'll link in quite a bit with what you do with your development and you know, how attachment can then affect speech down the track and things like that in building all those muscles, same sorts of things as we're talking about, Narelle. So check out that webinar. She's fantastic, and we will see you all soon. Thanks for joining us. Bye guys. See you, Narelle.